Hi, this is Andy Williams here from CNX Insure. Today I'm going to be talking to Thomas Carden from American International Tax Advisors. Myself, I've been living here for 25 years and I haven't got a clue about how the tax works here. It's a relatively new thing here as far as I'm concerned. And, we're going to find out some more about how this affects foreigners that are living here in Thailand. Typically myself, as working here, I pay tax, but what about retirees and digital nomads? How does that affect them? So, Thomas, if you could perhaps tell us a little bit about how has this come about? What's the history of taxation living in Thailand for foreigners?
Thailand has moved into the standard that almost everybody else does. Okay. One of the differences of Thailand has what's called a remittance basis system, okay, for international income, which means that the money that you remit into Thailand, you bring into Thailand, and theoretically it could bring cash you bring in anytime, but mostly this comes into bank transfers. Any money you've wired in through Wise. In fact, one of the recent changes is if it hits a Thai-based Wise account, that's considered a remittance. So even though it's not run in a Thai bank yet, if the Wise bank account is linked to a Thai bank account, that's considered a remittance. So the system is based on international income coming into Thailand. Now, the old rules that up until a couple of years ago were a bit unusual, okay, in that if the money had been outside of Thailand for more than 1 year after being earned, it was considered savings, okay, which meant that if I brought money out of my UK pension or my US pension or Australian pension or from anything, sale of a house or a business, left that in my bank account for 1 year, and then brought it into Thailand, that income was not taxable in Thailand whatsoever.
Right.
Now, this was not so much a loophole as a ship channel. You could drive a cruise ship through this. So everybody kept their money overseas for a year and brought it in. But then we'd have people who took their pension money out, brought in less than a year. They would go to the various regional Thai tax offices, and they would literally be told, leave, we don't know how to do this on the international income. So no taxation was effectively occurring on international income. Now, a lot of people look at the change and think the most recent change, was to go after foreigners. That's not really the case. The very wealthy Thais have a huge amount of assets overseas, and there's a lot of very wealthy families here. They had a lot of international income. They were dealing with Singapore and Hong Kong and various trusts and stuff. This, in my opinion, was really meant to be having these people pay their income tax when they start coming into Thailand. The foreigners are kind of bycatch this. But now the rule is that anything starting income earned after the date of January 1st, 2024, if you were resident from that point, is taxable here in Thailand. Okay, so if I was resident on January 1st, 2024, from that point on, anything I earn is taxable here in Thailand that I bring into Thailand. Now, this is really key to this. If all your income is staying offshore and you never bring any of that money in, it's not taxable in Thailand. But there's also one more kicker to this. It's a big thing. You don't become taxable in Thailand on your international income remitted in Thailand unless you've been here more than 6 months, which is a tax resident. So if you stay less than 6 months and a day in Thailand, you can be free. You can bring an unlimited amount of money into Thailand with it. Part of the reason of this is to plan, and you can start using all these types of things and make yourself more tax efficient, with it.
Sure. And I mean, who would you say that your kind of typical clients would be? I mean, would there be one particular type of nationality that it would apply to more? Retirees, digital nomads? I think you mentioned before as well that you were also able to help people from the UK with their tax.
Yeah. What happened was we're a firm that's just coming up on 10 years now. When I first started off, I thought we were just handling just Americans because unusually with the tax treaty in the U.S., you can pull money out of your pensions in the U.S. free of income tax that are private. If it's a federal government pension, no, that stays taxable in the U.S. But it's taxable not in the U.S., but only taxable here. Thailand wasn't taxing. It made everybody using the tax treaty free of tax using a lot of planning with it. So, but because we were heavily involved in the U.S. Thai tax treaty, we were one of the few people who had knowledge of this. when the change happened legally, was announced, it actually happened, I believe, in September, October of 2023. It was when the legal change was announced. When that was announced, we started looking at it and saying, wait a second, we're one of the few people who have this expertise in Thai tax treaties. And so we hired a very, very highly qualified staff of Thai experts as well to handle the Thai side for not just the U.S. nationalities. So we have somebody who's an expert on the U.K. pension issue with this. We have somebody who handles the German tax treaty issues. So you can have somebody in the U.K. come in to us, and we can consult on how to deal with the Thai tax treaties. And one of the big reasons of this is important is it's given out the old age pension in the UK as an example on this. Okay. And this is part of the joys of tax treaties. Okay. A tax treaty is an agreement between two countries that says generally what can be taxed and what can't be taxed by who. So sometimes it's one country will have first taxation, and the other country won't have any taxation with it. Now, in the case of old age pensions, the tax treaty does not mention them at all, as far as the UK old age pensions go. However, that's what's called the non-discrimination clause in the tax treaty, which effectively says that if you were a Brit here living in Thailand, Thailand cannot treat you differently than a Thai citizen who's living here, is here. Okay, you have to be treated equally. But also, UK income has to be treated for tax purposes the same as Thai income with this. It's really important in the non-discrimination clause. What this means then is because Thailand has a social security system. It's not very well developed, but there's a social security system here. And Thailand does not tax the income from that social security system. And functionally, the UK old age pension is the equivalent of Social Security by the tax treaty. And because it's the equivalent to Thai Social Security, Thailand cannot tax that old age pension with it. You should file a tax return here in Thailand and declare this, because at some point they're going to go and start asking questions of where this income is and why it's taxable if you haven't filed a tax return with it.
I mean, that's a lot of information. I would imagine your average person wouldn't have any idea about this kind of thing. And, certainly from everything you're saying, I mean, you guys, what the service that they're offering is, I couldn't imagine trying to do my own tax returns. I mean, do you sort of have any examples where you've seen people try to manage it themselves? Well,
the funny thing actually is that particular case, though, that was a German woman. We did another video with a YouTuber who does property, Jet Gunther, we talked about earlier. And Chacha, who is my Thai tax expert, has an LLM from Queen's Mary University in international tax on these issues. She's my lead expert on this stuff. We did a video with Jet, and we discussed this issue that we had not yet approached the Thai Revenue Department. And it was a German woman who saw the video, and the next day went to Thai Revenue Department and say, I've got German Social Security on this. I should not be taxing this. And the Thai Revenue Department was, what? They went and watched our video and then called Chacha up a couple days later and said, thank you. We didn't know that this had existed and done. But had we not done that, put that video out in policy, she wouldn't have been able to do it. Yeah. But we have, and God bless the Thais on this. When this was passed, it was effectively implemented about 4 months later. Okay. Normally, when this big of systematic change, they have years and years and years of trying to develop an international tax system. They had the 4 months before it became into effect, and they had 12 months after that to try to write the actual rules and regulations on this stuff. With it. Because of our background, we were able to deal with this on what the rules would be and interpretations on this stuff. But if you go into a local office somewhere and you ask the local clerk about international taxation on your income, they've not gotten any training. Sure. They don't know. You really have to deal with the heads of the regions on this. And we've been able to communicate with most of them to it, and they're very good about this, and they're very accepting of what the actual rules say. But there's not a lot of training in depth, even in the individual offices. These rules are kind of being written down as it goes through with this. And this is an interesting point, too. The biggest issue right now is a lot of people are saying, especially in the bars, when there's plenty of drinking here, are saying, I haven't filed a Thai tax return. Yeah, don't worry about it, blah, blah, blah. No issues. I got all this income. They're not doing this. And what's happening here is the screw is now on the table of what the rules are going to have to be. And they're trying to get the systems tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter to where they can get people to have to file their tax returns. And right now it's on the table. I think it's just about this year, starting to get put into the hole. And the first group they're going after is especially foreigners with Airbnb income who haven't been filing their Thai tax returns, because this is Thai sourced income. And they're going in, and just like the nominee company, they're going after these guys, and they're seizing properties and assets on this stuff because they owed a bunch of taxes, they weren't filing them to this. And they know that that's the first and easiest issue to go through. And then they're going to work themselves down and down and down and get to where everybody's got to file. There's a general movement right now in Thai Parliament to implement a law where it's called negative taxation. It means that the lower tier income people are going to get a small refund check back, similar to the U.S. with it. Because of that, everybody who's here for more than 6 months in a year or a day will have to file the Thai tax return with it. So you'll need a Thai tax ID number. Now, right now, secondarily to that, right now, none of this is linked to the immigration. Okay, you're not going to hear into this. Although we've had a couple wacky conversations come about on this, but you're not normally going to hear, have you filed your Thai tax return if you go in or out of the country with this, or it's not linked to your renewal of your visas yet. Very specifically, though, the Thai Parliament has been moving into making that law where this will eventually get linked to your immigration. So there's a lot of guys out there who are at the beginning stages of this saying, hey, I haven't been detected, I haven't heard anything, blah, blah, blah. That's only going to last so long before the system gets tighter and tighter and tighter. Every 90 days or so, they tighten that screw down just a little more.
So in that example that you gave about the guy that's had the Airbnb and he's been renting that out and they're going after these people, what would you recommend and what would you be able to do for someone in that situation? They've become aware of this fact now. What would they need to do?
You need to hire somebody like us.
Yeah.
Very, very quickly. We had one gentleman he was a Thai American. He played soccer for a Thai team. He paid his taxes on it in the U.S., not here, incorrectly, and he just got the system backwards on who he should be paying what with this. And the Thai's like, no, you owe us a large amount of money with this. And the fight has been a year and a half of trying to keep this. In fact, he was going to get married. He had to delay his wedding because he couldn't leave the country. This gets to be complex and very, very expensive with it. And what we're doing is we're sort of rejiggering his taxes and stuff. And so the U.S. is handling parts and the Thai thing's handling this, but it's moving forward with it. It's just a matter of trying to get this up there. Now, had he come to us in the first place and we filed this correctly, obviously we wouldn't have any issues, and it would have saved a tremendous amount of money and fees and heartache and stress, with this. It's better to do this in advance than it is on the backside of this because, when we send an expert down to try to negate the penalties, get all the returns filed to the last minute and stuff, it's much more expensive than just paying a few $100s to have your taxes done properly.
Sure.
With it.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I can't even, what a minefield it must be, to navigate that. And I can't imagine doing that on my own. I can't imagine people doing that on their own. Yeah. I mean, you definitely need to come and see a tax advisor. And it sounds like you guys are quite unique. You've seem to have all the bases covered. You mentioned earlier that you have, different advisors from Germany. Yeah. And you also seem to have a connection with the tax office here as well.
There's a little bit of misunderstanding. So some people think I work for the Internal Revenue Service because my actual title is IRS Enrolled Agent. What that means is I'm enrolled as an agent to represent you. I don't work for the IRS. Right. It just means I'm federally licensed with the IRS. But I don't have the ability to go in and manipulate Thai law and over this change. I don't deal with Parliament. I don't deal with the politicians who are making decisions. But our reputation and our work with the revenue department is very real. Cha-Cha, again, who's been my lead on this, when in that first year when it passed in 2024, with it, we had 12 months before the first returns had to be filed. We would send Cha-Cha down on a regular basis with a series of questions we knew with it. In fact, at one point she said, I don't think they like me coming in because I represent a lot of work when I come into these guys. And we implemented two things. One, I said, before you go in every time with our list of questions, go to Tim Hortons and take 24 donuts. Grease the wheels with donuts, but also tell them, listen, you're going to have several 100,000 people starting filing things with these questions that we know you don't know the answers yet. You can find them out now, find out what the questions are, and get the answers, or you can try to do this in March when you've got tens of thousands of people filing returns. They finally understood what we're doing, but because we spent that legwork of working with the revenue department, they've given us a lot of respect now with this, and they understand that we were conscious of this. We're working with this, and this is our biggest practice. And we deal with people all over the world who are expats here, Australians, Brits, people from South America. There's 64 different tax agreements, I believe. It might be 66 tax agreements here of international treaties. And each treaty is unique. So each treaty has to be read and looked at your particular situation, because there's times where you think, oh, I'm going to owe tax here in Thailand or I'm going to owe tax, say, back in Germany. The reality of it is, there are times when you can pay no tax here in Thailand and just your U.S. tax. This is predominantly Canadians. Most of the stuff in the Canadian tax treaty stays taxable only in Canada.
Okay.
Here, it's and not a whole lot of tax here. The U.S. is a mix. If you've got an IRA or a 401k in the U.S., it's not a government pension. You take that out of the U.S. free of tax, but you're taxable when it's brought into Thailand. But planning makes a big difference on this. If you don't bring the money in directly to yourself, especially if you have a Thai spouse or a Thai girlfriend that's long term, you can gift up to a certain amount of money to that spouse or girlfriend. She's able to cover the household expenses, and that money then is free of tax because it's a gift to her. Again, it's a gift. It has to stay money. She can't give that money back to you, but there's certain rules you can do. If you plan this, you can do this in a real way. Yeah. If you plan in advance, especially, you can do this real well. Because remember, if you said, like, I'm only the first year, I'm not going to spend less than 6 months here. You can bring an unlimited amount of money in, live off of that money for the next 3 or 4 years, and be free of Thai tax over the years.
So what my understanding would be, is it Americans then that probably have it the worst, because you're taxed on your worldwide income, and then you're also getting taxed here, so you're getting double taxation.
Well, that's the reason we were created originally, was because Americans have it the worst of I believe it or not, us and the Eritreans. No matter how long you are outside the U.S., unless you go in and renounce your U.S. citizenship, you are taxed as a U.S. citizen.
Right.
So, we exist, and the bulk of our clients are U.S. citizens. And we're, as far as U.S. expat tax, as from what I understand, we're the largest in Southeast Asia now with it. In fact, if you Google ChatGPT, who's the largest or the best, it pops us up to this. We operate all the way from Saudi Arabia up to Manila, multiple countries. And in fact, I'm in Vietnam next weekend, in Hong Kong and Singapore, to this as the head of the company with this. But that gave us that area expertise of dealing with what does the UK say and what does the Thai say, because we had to deal with that on a regular basis just from the US standpoint. Now we've had to branch that out amongst all these other countries with it and go through each of these tax trees, which gets really, really complex. Like the 2024, I had staff members, we were just literally going by, registering each tax tree. What does this say? What is here? So we have an internal guide that talks about each tax treaty, what's not taxable, what is taxable, and we're able to go to the Thai Revenue Department and say, this is taxable here and not taxable here, and how you file this. Because one of the big issues with it was, and again, God bless the Thais, they didn't have enough time to really develop this, so the forms were not robust enough to really report this. They've gotten a lot better recently. So we were literally talking to them and trying to develop the procedures on how to use a tax treaty into their tax returns, because it wasn't there. It had to be developed and put into this. So we learned to put attachments in, stay how this was done. And and we've tried to do this in a way with the revenue department of not being antagonistic. They've got their job. We've got our job. Our job is to minimize your tax, but also to prevent you from having headaches later on.
Sure.
You don't want the revenue department, by not filing the thing, to come up 3 years later and say, hey, no, you didn't file this properly, blah, blah, blah. That's where we come into. We follow up and make sure it's filed properly. Anything does come up, we help handle the issues. But this is really maddeningly complex.
Yeah.
It's something you do need an expert in. There are not a whole lot of these. And the more complex your financial life is internationally and money coming in, the far better it is, because you can minimize your taxes globally by doing proper planning.
Sure. And I mean, it must just make it even more complicated, the fact that you're a foreigner living in a foreign country, don't speak the language, trying to get through those hurdles. It's got to be, as I keep saying, I can't imagine doing that alone.
Yeah. We're right at 30 people now. The vast majority are very, very high qualified Thais in this.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, we have a full legal team that handles this stuff. And we handle all the way up to the most complex stuff. And you have to have that Thai legal team to do this.
Yeah.
In fact, they're legally actually preparing the actual work to it. I'm sort of just a spokesman on the Thai side on this. But the U.S. side, that's where we go to. But yeah, when you get into international taxation, I would refer to the difference between a clock and a meat grinder, an old-fashioned clock, because both of these are a series of gears with it. And if you've got a clock, when all your gears are matching up properly, you show up for your steak dinner.
Yeah.
Where if you go through the meat grinder with your steak, you end up with a hammer. You end up hamburger in the background. If you do this right, you actually can take advantages. If you do this wrong, you're going to come out hammered. You're going to pay more in tax and have more hassles in this than you want to have.
And how do you see this developing? Because I've lived here for 25 years, and quite often something like this is kind of almost, or it did to me anyway, it feels like it's kind of come out of nowhere. And, they'll announce something like this, and then as time goes on, they'll change the rules, or they might increase the amount of tax that you need to pay. What do you sort of see down the line, that kind of the way this is going to develop?
There's always a possible change of government with this, which can change things. But we've had a series of governments recently that are taking this more and more seriously. There's a revenue shortage here in Thailand, and it's almost critical.
Yeah.
So the politicians have to deal with this in some way. And again, the international taxation issue, when you're resident and taxation your global income here, is the standard for any country you're going to go and retire to. There's very few countries you can go in and retire to now that aren't going to tax you on the income you bring into this. Vietnam still has no taxation on international income, but they also have no current tax treaty with the U.S.
Sure.
with it. So this is the standard way of taxation. When you're 6 months in a day, you're tax resident in that country and taxable on the income. Some are taxable on your income regardless of whether you bring it in, but Thailand's an advantage of only the money that you bring in. But they are getting more and more serious about this. And again, every so many months, it's like a screw. Eventually, it's going to be flushed with the table. They're going to be tight. The reporting standards are going to go. They've signed up for an international accord called Common Reporting Standard. So they know you're resident here. They can go to the UK and ask the UK for your information on your investments and everything. And the UK has to do it. They have a bilateral information sharing agreement with the United States. They can go in. They know who you are. They can go to the US and get all your income information with it. And again, that's just tightening the screws bit by bit by bit.
Yeah, I mean, living in Thailand, it's always been known that the most important thing is you have to have a visa. It doesn't matter who you are, how much money you have, what size you are, you have to have a visa. And now that's becoming the way with tax as well. So it's going to be equally as important as having a visa over here. That's
an important thing about that, because remember, for years, you get these guys who overstay. And they'd pay a fine. They finally get busted. They pay a fine, and blah blah with us. And then they went to where if you overstayed for 90 days, you were out for a year. And if you were so many months, and nobody really believed that was possible, and they were going to do it. And there were a lot of guys kicked out of this country, because they'd been on long-term overstays for 3-5 years with it. This is the same system. It's just going to catch up more and more people to it.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, it's all the more reason for, you know, for using Thomas here and their services to facilitate and help you with your taxes. As I said, I can't imagine doing that on my own. And I want to thank Thomas for meeting with me
Thank
today.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andy.
And you'll be able to get all of his contact information through the YouTube video. Thank you.
Thank you.